Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. So we want to talk about de-escalating relationships?
Okay, let's talk about de-escalating relationships.
You want to talk about de-escalating our relationship?
I don't think I'm interested in de-escalating our relationship.
Right, but that's not the conversation I asked.
All right.
I asked if you're do you want to talk about
All right.
de-escalating it?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so the reason I'm putting it that way is you and I have a regular habit of talking about the status of our relationship.
Yep.
And that freaks out some people.
Okay.
But a long time ago, you and I began transitioning from being friends to being something more. And we didn't know what to call that. And so now, from the place I am now, I'm like, oh, we were escalating a relationship. I had known you my whole life. And then we were friends. Then we were casual friends. First, we were family friends. Like I knew you, but I didn't friends with you. And then we were casual friends. And then we were very involved friends. We ate at each other's houses all the time, and we were, present for big events. I was there when you came back from your vision quest, and you were there when my babies came into the world, and I was like, here, look, baby. And there were all these things. Our lives were starting to overlap more and more. And those were escalations along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And those were all socially sanctioned. And then one day we were on a very sticky dance floor. My first time ever in a bar, because I was very old the first time I went to a bar.
It wasn't that long ago.
32.
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced a connection with you that made me want to escalate our relationship to a new place. One that I didn't actually understand. I didn't have a word. I wasn't thinking I want to date you. I mean, I had no idea I didn't know about anything beyond monogamy, so I didn't know what that meant. I was like, I need to be more friends with you. What is more friends?
Yeah, right. Yeah, what is more friends?
What is more friends?
And this is what you're using the word escalate for.
Yeah.
More friends. What does it mean? Not sure, but...
So I was thinking about de-escalation quite a lot lately. I have several clients who are going through different phases of what they are terming de-escalations of their relationships, of their of either primary relationships or relationships that have long-standing commitments to each other and the obligations and all the stuff that comes with that. And that just made me think about how escalation and de-escalation often they bring up feelings for people.
Yeah.
And when I talk about the core of our relational connection, because at the beginning I didn't know what it was I was trying to do with you. I just knew I wanted to know you better. I knew I wanted more intimate connection with you. And that was not a euphemism at the time. It was, it was
about knowing each other more intimately.
Yeah. It very quickly then did become about more than that, very quickly, on the order of months. But we formed this relationship around a core principle that now has been a part of my life for so long that it's hard to imagine experiencing relationships any other way. And so, I experience relationship change all the time with people I'm seeing. I experienced a relationship change just today with somebody I'm seeing where we realized that we weren't able to have the kind of partnership that either of us wanted. And so we shifted things, whatever. And, it doesn't even matter whether I don't even think that's a de-escalation, but we shifted things. But at core, you and I decided that the relationship is what we make it.
Yep.
And so there's this natural status of needing to opt in to our relationship in this cyclical way. Like, we opt into our relationship every 3 years with a full review of like, what are we doing? Where have we been? Where do we want to go? Do we want the same things? Are we, yeah. And that includes a discussion about, so we can end things right now. We can end this form of our relationship and rewrite it right now. And I find that incredibly soothing.
So do I. I mean, every day we commit to our relationship.
Right.
Like intentionally, on purpose.
Yeah, every day when we get up.
Explicitly.
When we wake up.
When we wake up. And it is very helpful.
So that big picture, like revisiting everything every 3 years, that's the one that when I mention it to people, some people kind of freak out. They're like, so you live with the specter that your whole world might be turned upside down tomorrow. And I mean, I live with that specter every day. So
well, that's
from
kind of
my
where I was going with the daily.
This is normal.
Yeah, right.
I have normalized on the idea that while I have made agreements with you, we also have this this thing where we're embodied. Nothing's promised. But even beyond that, I feel a certain comfort in knowing that we have to opt in day by day, or we are actively denying the reality that we each get to choose. And you get to end things today. You could end this relationship during this podcast. You could end the form it's in. You could end it from your side. We happen to be, I think we're both wearing our wedding rings right now, which we haven't been, but then yesterday I put mine back on. And you could just change that. And I find it comforting to be with that reality.
I do too.
Not everybody does.
And I want to talk a little bit about the word end too. Because sure, I could end this relationship during this podcast. No, I couldn't. I couldn't stop relating to you. Even if I said, I'm moving out.
Because I talk so much?
I know. Yes, let's go into the reasons why I'm moving out now, because that'll be fun all by itself.
Oh, I was thinking you couldn't end it because I would just keep talking.
Oh, I couldn't end it because, Oh, that's
you need a hook,
funny.
Right?
Like, that's funny. Yeah, I keep trying to end it, but I just keep talking to me. But that, I mean, how would I actually stop relating to you if I went away from you? Even if I moved across the country away from you, the world would be filled with things that connect me to you. And I would have to deny that fact. I would have to find some way to fool myself into believing I wasn't connected to you still.
Okay, so true. But you and I both have exes. I have multiple exes who I do not think of as being in relationship to. Now, I know that I am. So I have a co-parent who I am not. So he's not someone I think of as being in a relationship with unless I'm considering the context of the kids. So I think there is something valuable to the idea of, there is an end. Yeah, there's an end. There was a day. And for us, it wasn't the day we got divorced so much as the day when I was like, oh, I ended my half of the relationship. I ceremonialized it. I marked that. There's an end. That relationship no longer is. Is there relating? Yeah, sure. There's relating.
Okay. There's an interesting conversation to be had here. Did it end or did it transform? And I think that's kind of a philosophical question.
Yeah.
And if we go to the practical, what you're saying is, you don't think about him. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my ex beyond the domain that we have practical considerations.
Well, except each of our stories then does contain our old relationships.
Because here we are talking about it right now.
Right. So I'm with you. I understand what you mean in principle, but when people talk about de-escalation, I think that there's a lot of fear that comes up because we're talking about change, and change freaks us out.
Change.
But we are escalating and de-escalating relationships quite a lot in our lives. Like that happens over and over again with our friendships, with our extended family relationships. That just happens, but there's no way to protect ourselves from the reality that things change. So we pretend. So we pretend that there's a way to protect ourselves. But now, when it comes to escalating and de-escalating relationships, there are sharp lines. Sometimes a de-escalation is, something really boundary breaking happens.
Right.
And there is a firm slam on the brakes and a skitter to a stop. And sometimes there's something that I think of, I call it a pragmatic de-escalation.
All right.
So when I'm working with people who are actively, they are still caring about each other. They usually still describe each other as, I love this person. And yet the relationship in the form it is, it's not working. There's something not functional here. And generally speaking, they've tried to repair, but in order to continue on their individuation paths, they've realized that there's just something that has to change. And so there's this, what I term a pragmatic de-escalation is so a de-escalation that is thoughtful, it's sensible, it takes context into account. It's not about a sharp ending so much as, oh, this is what is next for us. And let us do that with intention. And sometimes that intention means that it's not even intended to necessarily be permanent. Right?
Sure,
just like all other relationship agreements, we can only ever agree in a consensual way. We can only agree if we can rescind consent, right? We have to be able to pull back.
Right.
And so
it can't be a one-way street.
So is de-escalation, does it always have to be this permanent decision? Like, so if we aren't like this today, then we're done and there's no coming back from it. And I find that this is, like when we move away from the Disney, the rom-com version of love into a wider imagination of love, well, we change. And so sometimes a de-escalation is a shift that's necessary to experience what we are separate from each other.
Oh, yes.
And in this form, you and I have de-escalated for sure.
Yes, we have. Yep.
Several times we have changed, or I guess you could use the word transformed. It feels a little overwrought.
Change is good. I wasn't using it in opposition to change. I was using it in opposition to end, but I'm rethinking that as we talk. Anyway,
I was just thinking that the changes, there were times when we intentionally changed our relationship in a way that from the outside looked like a deprioritizing of the bond that we have, or of the, like, but again, it presumes this like hierarchy of this way, this relationship escalator, like
right.
First you're dating, and then you're only date, you're mutually exclusive to each other, and then you get engaged, and then you get married, and then you have kids, and you buy a house, and all that, like all these things that you go through. But since you and I had started off from a place of non-monogamy, there was already this unusualness. It didn't need to be that story. But whenever we have shifted into a less, like whenever it's been a shift from third gear to second gear or fifth gear to fourth gear, right? That has been met with some consternation by anyone else I talk to.
Mm-hmm.
But I've needed those times.
Yes, me too. And I will say that
in order to grow my relationship with you, not just
right.
in order to grow as myself, mm-hmm. yes, but also in order to grow in my relating to you, because we were stuck at several points along the way, and it was just not possible from the spot we were at to imagine the next place. the next way to be. And yet we also made some commitments to each other that they override some of the ways we might have de-escalated. So we might have we might move out of our house together. That's true. We could do that. But we committed to be in our children's lives, all of them.
And so
which means there needs to be
constraints on what we might,
which is not so because we have what people like to call a blended family. We don't have to. I'm going to use a word I absolutely abhor for children. Allow each other in our biological children's lives. I find it abhorrent because here's the thing. My children's lives are theirs. I just don't. Yeah, this is really tender for me because I've had adults cut out of my life because other adults were not. Yeah, I don't like that. It does not land well for me as a child who experienced that. Because we have agreed to prioritize being in our children's lives next to each other, I cannot live here with you, but I'm still going to be at birthday parties with you.
Right.
And I'm still going to be on text threads about Christmas with you. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just going to happen. And it has happened. There have been times when I can barely stand you.
Right.
And there we are, making life stuff happen. And I find it calming to know that we can do these pragmatic de-escalations where we're just attending to what the situation actually needs, including what my heart needs, what your heart needs, even if it doesn't fit the cultural narrative of. It's not just that it doesn't fit the cultural narrative of monogamy and monogamous relationship escalator. It also doesn't fit the cultural narrative of breakups.
Right.
Because breakups have to be whole and total.
They're a schism, and that's all.
Right.
But what if it's more nuanced because we are more nuanced, and also because we don't prioritize the relationship itself over either one of our individual selves?
Right. So this is in opposition to a lot of the way that I was taught to think about, say, family therapy or marriage therapy or any of those things. I was taught to think about it as like enhance the unit. The relationship needs to exist of its own accord. Like it needs to have its own rights and privileges. And that doesn't work for me.
Nah, fam.
It just doesn't work for me. Because when I do that, it is really hard for me to maintain a sense of self. And I fall into codependent behaviors, that word's overused. I fall into really enmeshed patterns. I fall into savior mode real fast as soon as that happens. It's just not helpful for me to think about our relationship itself as having rights and privileges. So instead, I think about the way I want to show up in relationship, and the things that you have expressed to me are your needs, your wants, your boundaries. And then I have to make hard decisions about how to, where to be, how we relate. When I think about de-escalating, I think about how untangling is all the harder if I have formed this hard idea of the relationship having its own entity, because now who exactly am I negotiating with?
Right.
So if I want to reimagine my relationship with you, which I love doing, even though it's often through tears, when I want to reimagine my relationship with you, I know I'm negotiating with you.
Yes. And I won't wield the relationship as its own reason to do something.
Well, you don't, which is great. But I was thinking, I literally don't know who to negotiate with if I'm negotiating with the relationship.
Right. Who would you talk to?
So I can't, because that's not you, that's us. But I can't. So this is where I find it challenging to reimagine if I'm too solidly fixated on the idea that the relationship itself has core.
Minor detour into economic politics. I feel about this the same way I feel about corporate citizenship. A corporation is a group of people that can change. So the corporation, like, who would you talk to negotiate with a corporation? Whoever happens to be in it at the time. But then, yeah, it gets really complicated really fast, and I don't get it. I would like to talk to a person.
Right. And that means that for me, the core of trying to de-escalate, I keep saying core. I don't know why I keep saying the word core today. But right at the center of de-escalating is this idea that what we're doing is going to be less than what we were doing, right? De-escalating. It's in the word, right? It will be less than. But a place that I often see people want to wind up when they're de-escalating is as friends. Mm-hmm. They want to be friends. They want to love their friends. They may not want to be romantically attached, or maybe they're taking the sexuality piece of their relationship out, or maybe they're separating their living situation or their finances.
But they're not looking for that schism. They're looking for.
But they want to be friends, and if you want to land as friends, it is. I'm not sure that's actually a de-escalation. I mean, I get it. Like, we need a word. I'm not saying we shouldn't use the word, but when I think about that, the thing that we have had to do in order to de-escalate some areas of our life is to actually escalate our friendship, to treat each other like whole humans who we want to relate to. So when I have friends who I do not live with and I'm not in romantic relationships with, I negotiate with them as people who have lots of agency, authority over their lives, autonomy, their own imagination, all of that, all their own obligations, all of that. I imagine them in this very whole way. But then I turn to you, who I live with, and I've made all these agreements with, and I've gotten really close to. And it is tempting and habitual to not treat you with that level of autonomy, agency, that wholeness that I presume of my friends. And so it's actually returning to our friendship.
Right. So what I see is de-escalating the relationship and escalating the person. Yeah. That's what I heard you just describe just now.
So that's what has worked for me. And so when I think about this concept of, well, if I want to be really careful and practical about how I'm untangling the different parts of our relating, if I can keep an eye on who you are, that you are not a response to me. You're whole unto yourself. If I can hold that, and it's not easy because after years of enmeshment and bonding and healing attachment wounds by relating to you, it is hard to stand over here with some space between us and say, oh, right, you are entirely yours.
It can be very hard.
Yeah, and I get to relate to you. And that might mean having less of our stuff overlap. Or it might mean receiving less from you in some ways.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
But I never feel like I have to dehumanize you or to decenter your agency, your autonomy. And that can also feel like a separation. I've seen you reject me trying to give you back your agency.
Yes, I certainly have, because
this is yours.
You mentioned your enmeshment. I have far more enmeshment proclivity. I lean toward it. I have leaned toward it. I have to work hard to stay.
I don't know. I have to work really hard at it too.
So we both work hard at it. And so you've been like, okay, so let's, and I don't know, you want to give an example of a de-escalation move?
I mean, one that comes to mind is separating finances.
Yeah.
and some people do this really easily. They're like, oh, we only combined them a little bit anyways. But sometimes your finances have become completely inextricably almost opaque. I can't even tell the difference. Or sometimes there really is a deep inequity built into the relationship. So untangling that makes it really obvious where you have power differentials at work. These things all matter and they all make a big difference. But another really common one is, what if we don't want to have a sexual relationship anymore?
Sure.
Or what if one of us doesn't? Well, I mean, a no is a no. And so what does that mean?
So now,
what else has to untangle if we're untangling that? And there's no simple answer, because for some people, oh, you don't want to have a sexual relationship anymore. Okay, well, what do you want to have? Maybe there is still a deep friendship. Maybe there's co-living. Maybe there's maybe there's friendship. Maybe there's even a sensual relationship. Maybe you eat and sleep in the same bed. Like, that's all fine. It's all up to each of us to decide what the shift will be, what the reweaving of the tapestry will be. But there are these pieces of relating that we tend to imagine as like, this is what relationships are. And if I don't have this, then it's not a real relationship.
Yep.
And that is a very different thing from, this is the bottom line of what I want in a relationship with people. And so here's my bottom line. So if I have a bottom line, let's say, of wanting to have, let's say I want to have weekly date nights, and I want to have a relationship where I can share my innermost thoughts and feelings, like where I can really emotionally share. And that's my bottom line. That's what I need to be in a relationship with someone. If you don't have that available, or you don't want to provide that, then I may decide to not be in relationship to you. But I can also have wants that are just unmet. It might not be a bottom line. I might want these things. I might be okay with like, well, yeah, okay. So I don't get everything I want from this relationship. That might be okay, because stuff happens. We don't always get everything we want. And
so this is moving away from the fairy tale Instagram picture of love, or relationship, however you characterize it, where, yep, this is it. I get everything I want all the time now.
Right.
So moving away from that and realizing, oh, that's not actually how any two people can, like, chances of that seem really low.
Well, but even if it's not, even if somebody has gotten there, stuff changes. But we get to have bottom lines. You get to have a bottom line requirement, like, this is what I need in my relationships. And you can end a relationship if those needs can't be met. And you also get to have a new imagination of what it is that you want. So when you say, what's a way you want to de-escalate? A lot of de-escalation is just about, how do we reimagine this? And what I find people struggle with is, it's really hard to reimagine relating to you without hating you. Like, some part of me is going to try to hate you.
Right.
Like, if I just don't like you, then this will all be easier. Like, this could be okay again, I think, for me, if I kind of just can't stand you. And that's where I start to see people building up a narrative around how things never worked, or this was always a problem, or we never got along.
Avoid the pain of loss by acting as though it's not a loss.
Yeah.
Because no, I never wanted that anyway. Yes, I did. And now I don't. And I have to live with that and figure out how I'm going to deal with it. And there's something about we humans are meaning-making creatures.
We are.
And there are aspects of the relationship. You mentioned money. And so if we separate our finances, and I mean, this is so microcultural, like if I was brought up in a way that leaves me feeling like, oh, shared finances is like a key part of a relationship, it doesn't have to have that much practical to do with how we relate to each other, but I might assign this meaning to this one overlap that's like, no, if you're saying we're separating finances, then to me that sounds like you're saying you're leaving me.
Right.
Because that's the meaning I've put on that thing.
And yet I've watched other people separate their finances and they're like, this was no big deal. Actually, it feels great. Love it.
Right.
Totally. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
And those kinds of things can then start a conversation. And I can say, this is how this feels to me. And you can say, well, this is how it feels to me. And you start working through and discovering whether that meaning is actually applicable to the people in the room.
And we can have different meanings.
We sure can.
And then it's about, can I just hold the multiplicity of like, yep, we don't agree on that.
Yep.
And in order to be in consensual relationship, we have to be able to hold on to these multiple truths and then act in accordance with like, yep. And we have to treat each other with care. So if you don't want to have your finances combined with me, well, okay, how are we going to pay our conjoint bills? What do we do about that? What's the method?
What's the practical thing we're going to do to make that happen?
And when it comes to really tender topics like de-escalating from a relationship that's very entangled, there's lots of touch points. A lot of times I see people just throw in the towel and just stop everything because they just don't want to do the work of unpacking the different pieces, of actually unbraiding the cords, right?
I really liked your reweaving the tapestry metaphor because I'd already been...
effort.
It's effort. And sometimes the thing that... when I'm thinking about de-escalating something, there's the thing itself, and then all the stuff it's attached to. It's like, okay, I'm just going to not do this anymore. We're gonna not share finances anymore.
Did you just tear that tapestry in half?
And all of a sudden, wait, that's connected to all these things about power differential. And now no, I didn't tear it apart. I thought I was going to, but there's all these knots I have to untie first. And when they're all untied, you might want to retie them in new ways, reweaving the tapestry. I thought that was great.
I want to encourage people, if they're thinking about de-escalation or escalation for that matter, if you're thinking about it, like seeing it as a reimagination is, generally speaking, a strong move. And sometimes seeing it as a reimagination also just leaves too many unanswered questions. So I don't think that there's a clear answer here. When I say see it as a reimagination, a lot of times what I see is people will get stuck on, okay, let's only take out the bad stuff, but let's leave everything that's good. But a lot of times what a reimagination really means is we're going to, actually like comb stuff out and take time to do a lot more stuff separately. We're going to do more differentiating activities. We're going to sort out more of our stuff. And so we're going to be more separate so that we can figure out how we can weave back together. And that's something I have struggled with you. I have struggled to get you to allow yourself. Yeah. So even once I pull myself out of things, I'm like, oh, I see you. You're still trying to weave. I left.
You're standing on the tapestry right now. You just back up. Yep.
And the move there is for you to engage fully in your own life.
Yes.
Actually engage in your life and to not be trying to reweave my tapestry. Yep. I'm over here in my life. And we've done all of this while living together the whole time because that's the scenario that we were in. And I don't think either of us wanted to end that, but also because it didn't feel possible. And so we worked on we're right up close trying to untangle this. And it's the process of untangling meant looking at all these different domains, all these areas where we overlap and starting to have, hundreds of conversations about, okay, how will we do this differently? How will we handle chores differently if we're going to tease this stuff apart? How do we handle who owns what cars? How do we handle our finances? Yes, but how do we handle our bed? How is that? And the interesting thing to me is every time we have worked through those conversations, we have gotten closer. For real closer.
For real closer.
Like, so there was more space for each of us, but I felt like I understood you more. I could relate to you on a deeper level. And then over time, often what happened was, we actually moved back into relationship in this way that was more nuanced, was actually deeper, allowed more me to show up in our relationship. And hopefully more you, although only you could say that. So the de-escalation periods and all that effort and teasing apart was so beneficial.
Yep.
And I think it would have been regardless of what had happened. Here we are. We've made it through 3 of these cycles of seeing whether we're going to keep our marriage piece at least together. And we've made it through literally thousands of agreement processes. And I don't regret any of those times when I was like, oh, we have to untangle something.
I don't regret those at all. I think they're a major part of why we have, I think, on the whole, gotten stronger over time in our relationship.
Well, one of the ways that we've gotten stronger from my perspective is that I feel very confident about how I show up in our relationship, how I show up in our relationship, not in some set of rules we have or even agreements we have, but I know who I am here. And so if you're spinning out or you are no longer really participating the way I expect you to, I still am participating the way I expect me to. So the stability level has increased.
Yeah. I said stronger. The word I actually mean is resilient.
Yeah.
When things happen,
there's
room and skills and time and space that then allow us to.
And de-escalation it doesn't feel like this like hard stop, bam, we just slammed into a wall and everything has to end. And so there are these times, these liminal times of like, I don't know, are we together? Are we apart? We're in the in-between.
I feel
and we've learned to tolerate that.
Yeah, tolerating the in-between is an important piece of the de-escalating because you have to have somewhere to be while you're untangling this stuff.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I certainly learned during my divorce process too. Like, it's not just over in a second.
Yep.
There's this period of time, this in-between, betwixt and between. Well, if you're thinking about de-escalating, if you're thinking about shifting, reimagining, then I strongly recommend that you take the time you need to really connect more deeply to yourself day by day. Like build the practices into your life, whatever yours are, so everyone needs to have reflective practices. If that means going for walks and being with yourself, if that means yoga, if that means neurosomatic intelligence, whatever it is, journaling, all your tools, building that in so that you are becoming more familiar with who you are. That is an integral step of de-escalating. There are all the pragmatic pieces, all the practical things, that's all real. But without knowing who you are and what you want and how you want to show up to your relationships, the rest of that is probably going to stay or go. You're going to have the same mess because you'll still be there at the end. Not the most fun episode, maybe, but very necessary.
Not the most happy up, but in fact, I have found that the actual work of the de-escalating and untangling I love untying knots. So there are aspects of it that are fun, although they can be emotionally very expensive.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to not be fun, actually.
Not be fun. Was that a dad joke?
Oh, no, it wasn't, but you made it one.
Oh, no.
It wasn't
okay.
one. All
so
right.
if you are listening and you're thinking, okay, well, I definitely need the skill sets to do this, then the year of opening might be the right place for you. The year of opening is a place where Ken and I together support small groups of people who are on this path together, figuring out like, what the heck are we doing in non-monogamy, in our individuation journeys, in all of this? The fall cohorts are enrolling right now. This is your last time to get in for 2023. And so if you're listening to this, I hope you get in touch with me right away. You can reach out directly to me, in fact, Joli@jolihamilton.com, or you can get over onto theyearofopening.com, put your name on a wait list, and if there is still a spot, then you'll hop right in. I think there are only 4 spots left right now, so it's getting tight.
It's a container where you get the support of a trained professional, Dr. Joli, and also each other.
Dr. Joli me?
I did just Dr. Joli you. And also each other. You support everybody in there supports each other, and I can't overstate the value of that.
It's good not to be alone while you're going through all of this growth. It's so much growth to get really clear about what you're doing in your relationship structure. This isn't about you shifting from a good or a bad, like it's just about you doing your relationship and getting some more tools, some more active processes that you can trust so that no matter what happens next, you're actively ready to be part of your own relating process. There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliquiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com, and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.